What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. And on this episode of The Urban Platform Speaks, I'm going to be speaking about the statements that Michael Jordan made about this GOAT conversation, right? And I think what Mike said is definitely true. People, I don't want people to think that at least not myself coming down on LeBron James because I'm not a LeBron James fan. But when you look at it from a fan's perspective, especially fans who were able to see, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, uh, Isaiah Thomas, Charles Barkley, all of those guys, you have a certain standard that you're used to. You used to seeing a certain standard of basketball, and those guys, for the most part, to Michael Jordan's point, they did recognize that they were standing on guys like Jerry West shoulders, Bill Russell shoulders, Wilt Chamberlain shoulders, Bob Cousy, a lot of guys that came before them. It was their job to move the game forward. And I think that, in my opinion, I think Magic and Bird did it. Isaiah did it. Like all of those guys who came after Jerry West and Bob Cousy and all those guys, I think they moved the game forward. Because when you think about it, in the 80s, like they say the 80s was the heyday of basketball. Like that's when basketball was at its greatest. It's not only, in my opinion, not only the NBA, but college basketball during that time was the best. But for the sake, I'm right now I'm just talking about NBA basketball. And so and I have to agree. Like when I think about basketball in the 80s, even before Michael Jordan, like Michael Jordan was doing his thing and he didn't start winning championships until, like 92. But man, in the 80s, basketball, it was just like it was just so much better. It was so, to me, that was before Michael Jordan even started winning his championships, basketball was just the 80s was in my opinion the best era, right? And all of those guys were standing on everybody else's shoulders. Now, Mike Jordan did this interview with Mike Tirico, and he said some things that I thought, that I want to react to. But the thing about LeBron James to me is that for him to be, they say he's a historian of the game. He know the game, and to me, it's obvious that either he know the history and ignored it, or he didn't know the history at all, because a lot of key moves that he made throughout his career is because that is what put LeBron James in the situation that he's in now. When you look at the history of the game and how each generation made the game of basketball better, LeBron James didn't do that, right? And I think he didn't do that, and I don't even think it's all LeBron James' fault, in my opinion. I think part of the fault should go on the league. And Michael Jordan spoke about this too. When you give a player who hasn't earned anything, you give them everything. And that's what they gave to LeBron. Like, they crowned him before he had played any basketball. They crowned him the king. The greatest thing since sliced bread. I think before he even played a game in the NBA, he signed a massive like $80 million contract or something crazy. I think that was with Nike, right? 40 million, maybe 40 million or something with Nike. And so what is there to work for when he was handed everything before he even played an NBA game? He was in high school driving around. In high school, um, he was driving around in a Hummer truck, so they gave him anything, and he never really felt like he had to work for anything. And so when fans see that somebody is not really appreciating the game, they're not putting their work into it, then that's why they push back on this GOAT conversation, because they know, what that level of play looks like. They know what that dedication look like. And LeBron James didn't do that. He took so many different shortcuts throughout his career, from moving around to team. Like I said, not working on certain aspects of his game. Um, you know, making his teammates, the scapegoat, for when they lose, or blaming coaches and stuff like that, flopping. It's just so much stuff that goes on with LeBron James that you didn't see that with players in the past. You didn't see these guys flopping. Wasn't no excuses for, if like, if you were the face of the team, you took the blame, for loss. You took the blame for not being able to make it to the playoffs. Magic Johnson was Tragic Johnson. Michael Jordan, they criticized Michael Jordan game. He couldn't win the big one. He couldn't get his team to the championship. They said that. Like, and so wasn't no excuses, wasn't no scapegoats back then. Larry Bird didn't have scapegoats. Charles Barkley, you just had to face the music. You just had to face the music, but it wasn't like that for LeBron James. And so that's why, and I don't even think fans are hating on LeBron James. I just think that fans know what it looked like when a player leave everything out there on the court, on the floor. And LeBron James was never that. He was never that guy who left it out there on the floor. And cool, if LeBron James think that, he played as hard as he could play, and that was everything that he had to give to the game, but don't call yourself the GOAT and the greatest of all times, especially when you're flopping and making excuses, not developing certain aspects of your game. Like, don't do that, and you put yourself under the microscope, and so I'm going to play what Michael Jordan said to Mike Tirico in this interview, and then I'm going to come back and I'm gonna add a little bit more to it. But I'm basically, that's my point. It's like, when you're used to seeing a certain standard of basketball, even Lakers, you had Byron Scott just came out and said that he ready for LeBron James to leave, and that's because like Lakers Nation and all those guys, man, they just have a certain standard when it comes to basketball, and LeBron James did not meet that standard. So here we go with Michael Jordan, and I'm gonna come back and give some more of my my take.
To talk about the conversation of that term, the GOAT.
The whole GOAT term is never going to be something that I ever will get high or low about. It just doesn't exist with me. I never played against Oscar Robert or Jerry West. Would have loved to. Absolutely love to. Just as competitive as I am. And I actually learned from them, and we, paved the road to the Kobe's and the LeBrons, right? And to me, it's the beauty of the game of basketball, that a player after a previous player has evolved the game further.
Mm-hmm.
But don't then, in essence, this is where I look at it, don't then now use that against the player that actually taught you the game or that you learned from.
Yeah,
and that's why I have a tough time. And, look, I would love to have played against LeBron and, Kobe in my prime. I would love to have played, against those guys. But we'll never be able to know that. Part of the marketing, part of the hype, part of the things that tries to elevate one generation above the other,
right,
I think it creates animosity. I have no animosity against today's players, but you do have certain players that do have animosity because of the forgottenness of what their contribution has been to the game of basketball. It is what it is. It is a empty comparison. It's absolutely never find that the true answer to that question.
It's a circular conversation.
It's just going to keep
You're
going.
never gonna get
and
it
I
right
understand.
But it's great to talk about.
100% to talk about and envision. Look, I think LeBron has had an unbelievable career, and I admire him for what he's done. And Kobe, as well as KD, and all these guys who have played in this era. I think they've elevated the game of basketball tremendously. I just don't agree when you start, trying to put one above the other. It doesn't work. We'll never know. It creates more of a problem from, not for me. I've never given it credence. But for other players who look for their existence within the generation of basketball, and we should always honor that. We should always preserve that. We should always reward that they paved the road for a lot of generations after that. And by doing that, you somewhat, Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell had 11 championships.
Yeah.
How do you just push them in the corner and say, oh, we ain't gonna think about you. We forgot about you. That to me is where I get lost.
All right. And so, and one final thing I just want to say is that's why I think like so many guys, you have like Ron Harper was another guy who spoke up about LeBron James, because these guys want to play, they want to pay homage to people who played during their era. NBA basketball was it was tough back then. And so you can't say that I'm the greatest, and not expect put yourself under the microscope. And so, what I appreciate about Michael Jordan is, he acknowledged all those guys. So the guys who are playing today, the guys who played back in the, in the past, all of those guys contribute to the league. And to be honest, there's no way that you can say that anybody is the GOAT. Some people can make a case for, somebody who Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West. You can make a case for any of those guys. So, but the disrespect and to try to make it and make statements like this era is the toughest era, and people who play basketball, know basketball, just laugh when they say that, man. And so that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, I'm going to check you all out in the next video. Peace.